But if you couldn't afford a donkey head, what could you afford? Well, maybe you couldn't afford it because it's still pretty expensive, but it talks about the seed pods. Now, how can I say this most politely? That's basically like what we might call pigeon droppings. Now listen, Bear eats that stuff all the time on his show. All right. So I'm just bearing out at desperate times people will eat just about anything to make it. Well, that sounds pretty bad. Well, it's bad, but look what happens now. It's a desperate situation. As the king of Israel was passing, well, let me make sure we all agree this is desperate, don't we? All right. As the king of Israel was passing by on the wall, a woman cried to him, "Help me, my lord the king." The king replied, "If the Lord does not help you, where can I help you from? From the threshing floor? From the wine press?" In other words, what's the king saying? I don't have anything on the threshing floor. I don't have anything on the wine press. What are you asking me to do? What can I do to help you? Where should I get help? And then he asked her, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" Now look at this response. She answered, "This woman said to me, 'Give up your son so we may eat him today, and tomorrow we'll eat my son.'" It's pretty bad, isn't it? I'd say that's desperate. That's a desperate measure. I remember, I think it was back in about 72, there was a soccer team that crashed in the Andes. Do any of you remember that story? And they began to eat the members of the party who died. Began to cannibalism. I know that must have been horrendous for them to do that. I can't imagine doing that, and I'm sure none of you can. I'm sure the day before the crash, if you would have asked any of those people, could you ever imagine eating a human being? The answer would be no. I can't imagine that. What made the difference? Desperate times, desperate measures to survive. So here these women had worked out this deal, and I can't imagine a mother killing their child for food. Can't imagine that. Much less two mothers making this kind of agreement that these two did. We'll have your son day one. We'll have my son when that supply runs out. Desperate times, desperate measures. But the problem here for this mother wasn't so much that they killed her son. What was her issue? We didn't kill the other child. I'm hungry again. Who was she putting the emphasis on? See, that's astounding to me. Can you see that she became focused on self? Oh, this terrible situation that I'm in. Is that self-pity? This is so bad. Look at how it's affecting me. Well, how did it affect her child? Who really paid the price here? Not the mother, but she was so absorbed in her self-pity. And let me tell you what, self-pity is usually what we use to justify inappropriate actions that we take to meet our need. Okay? Self-pity is the basis that we use. Once we can convince ourselves that this is a problem we didn't create, we don't deserve, oh, woe is me, then we can begin to move to the next step of taking action that we would never have taken before. Her concern is we didn't eat the other child. That's not what? It's not fair. This is not fair. Oh, king! Can you imagine the king had ever had such a problem presented to him before that he had had to adjudicate? What is she wanting the king to do? Prevail on my behalf, O king, and make her kill her child. She's hidden the child. Make her kill her child so we can eat because we did my son. I gave my son up. It's only fair. How would you respond if you were the king? Can you imagine what that would be like? Well, the king certainly has compassion, as we'll see. Or does he? Verse 30, when the king heard the woman's words, he tore his robes. As he went along the wall, the people looked, and there underneath he had sackcloth on his body. He said, may God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if the head of Elijah, son of Shaphat, remains on his shoulders today. I can't believe y'all have killed a child. I can't believe it. Is that what he did? Who did he turn the attention on? Himself. He tore to reveal that he was in mourning and sorrow. That's what the sackcloth that he was wearing under his robes. To let the people know how deeply this was affecting who? Him. Who was he pitying? He didn't. It's interesting to me, nobody has pity on this child that died. Nobody's concerned about this child that died. They're all concerned about themselves. Oh, woe is me, says the king. Look what's happened in my kingdom. Look what's happening to my people. This is a bad reflection on who? On me. I can't believe this. So he moves to that next step. He does what? Who can we turn this on? And again, I find this fascinating. He says, surely, this is Elijah's fault. Well, what did Elijah do? Read the whole book. Read all of 2 Kings if you need to. Elijah's done nothing. Elijah didn't cause this. He didn't create this problem. But he's the man of God who stands for everything that the king doesn't stand for. And I think there's surely some guilt the king feels because he hasn't served God. He sees that this is God in action. So he says, surely today Elijah's head will be removed from his shoulders. Well, I thought the whole idea was we wanted to kill the other child, right? Are we going to eat Elijah? That may be what the mothers were thinking. Oh yeah, this will be even bigger. No, he's completely moved on from that. He's moved to this focus of his life, who he thinks is causing his problem. So he says in verse 32, now Elijah was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. The king sent a messenger ahead, but before he arrived, Elijah said to the elders, don't you see how this murderer is sending someone to cut off my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold it shut against him. Now, Elijah knows this is happening. And what does he call the king? A murderer. This murderer is coming. God's warned me. He's coming for me. So get down there and bar the door, because it appears that Elijah also knew the king was going to change his mind, because he says the king will be coming shortly behind him. And so that happens. Verse 33, while he was still talking to him, the messenger came down to him, and the king said, this disaster is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer? So he shifted the blame from Elisha to who? He now says, I realize this is God is doing this. And so why should I wait for the Lord any longer? Why wear this sackcloth? Which is supposedly a sign that I'm asking God to deliver us, to God to come here. He's moved to that next level. He's lost all hope. He's lost all faith. He's in utter despair. He has basically given up. The whole kingdom will fall. We're eating donkey heads, pigeon droppings, and people are eating their own children. This is a nightmare. We'll never recover. This is the Lord. There's no hope. And he was ready to let it go.